and welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live video series. And joining me today to share the stories behind the 10 books that influenced her the most on her life path is Australian energy intuitive, conscious evolution teacher, transformational workshops facilitator, speaker, and author of the very prescient book, A New Chapter, Dana Mrkich. Dana, thank you for joining us today. It's really good to have you with us.
Thank you, Sandie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here today with you and with your audience.
And thank you for sharing your 10 best list. And I love the fact that you opened up your list with a quote by one of my favourite authors, Carlos Ruiz Zafón, who died recently, very sadly. You said, and I so share this sentiment, some like to believe it's the book that chooses the person. Good quote.
Yeah, I find that I absolutely loved putting together this list, and that's how that quote really came to me, because as I was going through my list of books, which of course it's so challenging to find just 10, but when I did find the 10, I realized, oh my gosh, I felt like I was going through almost writing an autobiography of my life, and I could see my life's journey through those 10 books. And that quote just perfectly kind of encapsulated the fact that I could almost see how each of those books had come into my life at different phases and stages of my life for different reasons, and opened me up in different ways, activated me in different ways, taught me different things that I needed at those particular points.
You know, people talk about when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I think that books are our teachers. And you're absolutely right, because that happens to me all the time. And everybody I speak to tells me about books just turning up at just the right moment. So, yeah, I like to think that they're little magical elves, actually.
I think so too. And something that I've noticed lately, and when I say lately, over the last several years, and family and friends that I speak to are feeling the same way, I feel like a lot of people aren't reading as many books as they used to, because we've all got devices in our hands all of the time. And even for myself, I love books, live and breathe books. I've always got books on my, bedside table, and I'm usually reading like 4 at once. But I even find that I'm reading less than I used to, or I have to consciously, put down my device and think, no, actually, I want to read a book. I want to read these books. So I think even starting this conversation today, just reminding people of just the magic of books and how good they are. And even the brain slows down. I was talking to my son, Jackson, and I said to him how, when I was reading the other day, it was such a relaxing couple of hours. Whereas if I'm reading, if I'm scrolling through a news feed or a social media feed, the brain is, it's always ticking away. So it's such a relaxing thing to do. And I want to remind people of that now more than ever. We need these relaxants in our lives.
It's so true, I hear this quite often. People are reading less, but I think they're getting a little bit more discerning about what they read. And it's interesting how, the digital has changed things. I mean, when Kindle first come out, I was adamant, there's no way I'm ever going to give up reading, hard copy. It's such a tactile experience. And then I was bought my first Kindle as a gift. I would never have bought one myself. And I suddenly realized that when I traveled, I didn't have to take a heavy suitcase full just of books. They could all live on that Kindle. And so suddenly I fall in love with this device, and I'm, lying in bed reading it, and it's so much lighter to hold as well. But over the years, what I found is it didn't stop me loving books. And the thing about, I can read that, and usually I read the books that when I'm going to do an interview and I have to read a book, I read it on my Kindle, and I usually read it in bed at night, and I can make notes as well. But if I want to read a book for me, then it has to be, I have to go somewhere else. I have to go into the garden or into another room or sit somewhere else and turn that into a completely different experience. It's like, you've just got to, get the whole atmosphere together. I can't sit reading a book that I want to read for me in front of a computer. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, isn't it? It's so interesting.
It is. It is. It's fascinating. And I think one of the other things that I'm hearing too from members of the club, subscribers, is I really thought I was done reading books. But actually, and I didn't think that I would enjoy these interviews, but actually, it's reviving my interest. Because I'm suddenly remembering, oh, I remember when I read that book, or oh, that sounds like a really good one. And so I think that the book club is doing something very positive for books, which pleases me knowing, because books are my
Oh,
life. Yeah.
definitely,
But
definitely.
let's get going on your list. And your first book on the list is one that I think woke many people up, or at least, kind of created a chink in the armour for many, many people. And that was The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. Where were you, and what time of your life did you read that book?
So I read the Celestine Prophecy. I would have been around, I sat 19 or probably 19 or 20 years old. And it is embedded in my head because it was really the first book that I read that made me feel, oh my gosh, someone thinks how I do. I'm not alone. Even though I had grown up in a fairly awake, open household, my mum always had all sorts of interesting books lying around, like, you know, looking at the other side and spirits and all that sort of stuff. I still felt different compared to the general community, compared to friends, compared to other family members, not just, my mum and my sisters. So it was so good to read this and think, oh my gosh, other people, not just my mum, because your mum is like your mum, but other people think like this. So for someone like myself, I was 19 years old, I was 20 years old, I already felt like I'd been dropped here, from another planet. I already knew that we were more than just physical. I already had a very strong awareness of the non-physical, but at that time, it wasn't maybe how it is today. I I hadn't been yet, exposed to the whole mind, body, spirit world, I guess. So it came at a time where it just made me feel less alone, really, and it just started opening up that particular part of my journey where I started delving into things in a much more conscious way and started making sense of things that up until then, I guess, had only been more vague notions of who we are and how we are and yeah, what our energy fields are all about. Yeah.
So, what were you doing at that time, and what vision did you have then about how your life was going to proceed? Because clearly, at that point, it never occurred to you that you were going to be an author, a teacher, workshop facilitator, working with energy,
Oh my gosh.
etc.
Yeah, I will tell. I remember exactly. I remember exactly that time. Okay, so I had left high school. I had wanted to be a journalist, but even though I got really, really good grades in Australia, you had to be in sort of the top 3% or something to get into the journalism degree. And I didn't get into that particular degree. I was devastated, devastated. So somehow I don't know, life takes you in a, round and round and roundabout way. I ended up working just for a brief few years, working in the sort of five-star hotel world in marketing and PR. And I thought, okay, I'm still working with words, sort of. But to tell you the truth, I was there and kind of crying because I knew I didn't belong there. I just knew it. And I'd be off in the office giving secretly quiet tarot readings to people, you know. And then I remember, and I'll never forget this moment. Those Sunday lift out, the magazines in the, Sunday paper, and this was around that exact time, and there was a double page spread on Marianne Williamson. And at that time, I think she was still at the stage where, so we're talking nearly 30 years ago now. So I remember she was giving talks and it was like donation only, and she'd talk here, there, everywhere. And I remember exactly thinking, that's what I want to do. And not even that's what I want to do in terms of a career or in an ambitious way, but it's like it activated something in me. I just knew that's what I'm here to do. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help people in that way. And I wasn't exactly sure how it would all come about. But I guess, long story short, the corporate world just didn't agree with me at all. And as you know, my sister Yell and I ended up starting a business when I was about, I don't know, 23, 24 years old. And we got into, creating journals and using journaling as a prompt in which to write your thoughts and feelings. And we created a website that was all about self-awareness. And this was at a time where very few people were online. It was still such a small kind of a world. And at the same time, my little secret tarot readings, I'd been doing quite a bit of traveling, and here and there I would just do readings. And at that time, really just to kind of pick up a bit of money here and there as a traveler. And when I came back from overseas, anytime that I sort of, I don't know, I just kept getting pulled and pushed into that direction. People would call me for a reading, and I wasn't advertising, I wasn't really putting it out there as a job. But it's so interesting, Sandie, because any time that I made any sort of headway into the traditional mainstream journalism world, and I I applied for internships, I applied for what do you call it, a cadetship. I sent off articles. Closed door, closed door, closed door. I was just not allowed in that world. However, without any effort, hardly, all people would just call me up, ask me to do a reading. There was the Mind Body Spirit Festival. I was asked to go there and do readings for people. The river just kept taking me in that direction. And I won't go further along into my story because that's probably further along down in the other books. But the river of life has continually supported my direction whenever I'm working directly with people, whether it is soul sessions, whether it is writing articles to do with personal growth. And of course, definitely you helped me a lot there, because my very first online articles were with your Planet Lightworker magazine, in 2004. So it's just interesting, books come to you when they need to come to you, but also life takes you really where your soul wants you to go, and you get little Hansel and Gretel cookie crumbs, just like that article that I saw of Marianne Williamson's. I think that was a Hansel and Gretel cookie crumb for me, saying this way, this way.
Yeah, it is fascinating, isn't it? If we it sounds like such a cliche, just allow, but it's true. It's true. Yeah. So let's go on to book 2, The Star People by Brad and Francie Steiger.
Yeah.
What grabbed you about that book?
So what grabbed me about that book is I always felt, and this is just the most simplest way to put it, I always felt as if I had been dropped on this planet from somewhere else. And I just remember feeling like my home was somewhere else. I remember feeling at some point I'm talking when I was really little, I felt like my parents weren't my real parents, and that, some sort of spaceship had dropped me off on this planet. And I remembered having very, very strong and clear visions of a different kind of a world that did not resemble at all this world. So I remember in those days where I used to work in the city and I used to go work in the hotel, and people would, get on the bus and get off the bus, and they're all dressed in their suits and they were dressed in their ties and they were doing the 9 to 5. And for me, that just felt so just so strange, so weird, so odd. It just, I thought, what is going on here? Why are people living like almost in this robotic kind of a way? And so I just couldn't make sense at that time of life as it was on this planet. And again, it's a lot more awake and aware and conscious now. Nearly 30 years ago, it wasn't so much like that. I don't know where I came across this book, The Star People, but I think it must have been some used bookstore or something, because it's one of those, you know, the books that you get with the really yellow pages and,
Yeah.
you know, it's been pre-loved. And that was another book, yet again, that I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. And in that book, there's a checklist of, you might be a star person if you feel like this, and if you know, think like this, and if you've had this experience. And there was like a list of like 50 things, and I was like, tick, 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 tick. And so that was really, really, yeah, it was just really cool and exciting to again realize, okay, there are other people who have some sort of connection to the stars or other star systems, or, you know, life in other spaces and places.
I hear from many people that, you know, they grew up feeling, I don't belong here, you know, I've never felt like you, but I have felt I don't belong anywhere. You know, I have been in company at times in different places, different countries, and thought, I don't, I don't really feel completely connected, you know, to anybody in this room, or I just don't know where I'm supposed to be. And I think I think it's soul memory, you know, bleed through that part of us knows.
Yeah, I definitely now feel and know it's soul memory. And I do feel differently now. I had quite a significant turning point around the time I was 30, uh, right around the time my mum was in transition and she passed. And I had a really big, I call it my human awakening, you know, because up until that time, and it's embarrassing to say it now, but, you know, I called people the humans. That's how disconnected I felt to being here. Whereas I had a real massive shift when mum passed. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I just had a real human awakening moment of being here in my body on this planet, and actually falling in love with humanity and falling in love with the knowing that I wasn't put here, I wasn't left here, I wasn't forced here. I chose to come here. I chose to come here. Not only did I choose, and for people watching, if you resonate, did you choose to come here? It's special. It's special to be here, and it's a gift to be here, and especially at this time for the shift that we are well in right now.
Which, I mean, how long ago did you publish a new chapter? 6, 7, 8 years ago?
I No, I published that, gosh, 12 years ago.
12 years ago. So prescient, so prescient. I mean, you know, you could have written it yesterday for today, because, I mean, it is
Yeah,
explaining exactly what's going on, isn't it?
this is it. And this year is, when I say it is the shift that we've been waiting for. It's not like, oh, this is the shift, and oh, was that it? We are now in it.
Yeah.
This is it. It doesn't maybe look how we thought it would look, but we are now in the shift that we were waiting for. And when everybody started shutting down and being sent home, and everything, you know, in Australia we called it lockdown. I know different countries call it different things. That's when I realized. I thought, here we go, we're
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, book number 3, another one of my favourites. You know, I know that you and I both are scholars of astrology. Astrology for the Soul, Jan Spiller. What a book! I mean, there's a gazillion astrology books out there, and all have their merits. But there is something special about that book, because I think knowing about your nodes really does give you a big understanding of, you know, the persona that you're living in this time round, and what, you know, what you've brought with you.
Absolutely. I just love astrology. And interestingly enough, I don't usually incorporate necessarily astrology into my sessions or anything. I've always almost left it as something that's mine, that I love to do, just for the fun of it and the joy of it. I do write about it quite a bit though. And with Astrology for the Soul, she specifically talks there about your north and south nodes. I find astrology just so amazing. I mean, I used to love maths at school, so it's that perfect blend of the mathematical mind and the, you know, intuitive mind. But I find that if you know if you know your chart, and if you know your transits, and if you know where things like your north and south node are, it makes changes in life and even crises in life so much easier to bear and so much easier to understand. You know, like the last sort of, you know, there was quite a few years there where there was just a lot happening in my life, and there was a lot of really, you know, confronting things happening to do with, you know, wider family stuff. Had I not known that I was going through a Pluto transit, I might have just wanted to, you know, climb underneath my Juna and just not come out again for a couple of years. But because I knew that Pluto was going over my north node, for example, then Pluto was going over my ascendant as another example, it was so much easier to understand what was going on, why it's going on, what is this trying to teach me, what is this trying to show me. So for people who, if you want to know more about yourself, Astrology for the Soul, it's a really easy to read because you don't necessarily need to know too much about the technical aspects of astrology, but it shows you with your north node maybe your inherent patterns in life. Why are you how you are? Particularly, I have a lot of people come to me who maybe have relationship issues where they swing between either um, codependent or overly independent. Um, and usually, quite often, the north node placement will tell you exactly why that kind of pattern is going on in your life.
Mm, yeah, yeah. My astrology teacher, you know, taught me that the stars impel, they do not compel. And, you know, my family used to say, and I used to have a session with her every year in between our teachings, and she would lay out the year for me. And they'd say, why do you want to know? Because you're just going to make that happen. And it's like, no, use astrology or it will use you. If you're unconscious of it, then you're not going to understand why things are happening, as you say, and you may want to run away from them. But if you understand that this is happening now, and you can actually use that to your benefit, and you can ride the wave, you know, and, you know, just put your big girl's knickers on and, you know, shoulder the burden or whatever's
Yeah,
coming your way,
yeah,
because there's a point to it all. It makes it so much easier. So I'm really glad you mentioned that one. And another, you know, wonderful person who's no longer with us. Um,
mm.
and that's sad, but yeah, it is a perennial favourite of mine. Book number 4. Now, here's a man who I think is finally, people are saying, well, maybe he's not so crazy after all.
Yeah,
David Icke and The Truth Shall Set You Free. So tell
yeah,
us how that book came into your life, what it did for you, and your thoughts about all of this now.
yeah. And you know, I really could have picked any one of his books, you know, like, but I happened to pick that one. So I actually met David. He was doing a little talk, and this was, oh my gosh, at least 20 years ago. So I don't know when his first little book started coming out. It might have been 99. I don't know, 99 maybe. And we have not no longer, unfortunately, but we used to have a huge metaphysical bookstore in Sydney. And he came and did a talk. And there was probably only 20 of us there, just crowded around. He was just on a little stool, and we were just all around him, you know, just listening to what he had to say. So I find what I love about David Icke is he's always what I call gone down the rabbit hole. And he's gone down the rabbit hole without fear, or without fear of the ridicule that he has been subjected to. And a lot of people kind of brush him off because they associate him with the reptilians or things like that. But you don't have to, you don't have to go look at that side of things. There's a lot that he has said that has actually come to pass, and that is becoming more and more obvious, to do with things like global politics, for example. So I remember, I don't know if it was him that said this recently or someone else. They said that 10 years or so ago, there'd be like 99 comments under David Icke's post saying you're crazy, and there'd be the one fan. And today, especially this year, it's the opposite. 99 people are saying, wow, you got it all right. And there'll be the one person saying you're crazy. So I feel like with David Icke, there are things that you won't be ready to read. But there's certainly, he's full of knowledge. I remember things that I read in his books 20 years ago, or even more, probably even longer. I wasn't ready to read the details of certain things that he was writing about, which now, especially this year, are almost becoming mainstream knowledge. And so I feel like you do not only come to certain books in their right time, but even in particular with things like his books, because he crosses so many different topics and so many different areas. I find that his books, all of them actually, the way that I've read them all is just open it up. I flip open and I read whatever I'm supposed to read, because that's how I would almost recommend a lot of people read his books. You will find whatever it is that you need to find for you, that resonates for you, and that maybe you need to read right now.
I think that's really smart, actually, because two things about David Icke. I was living in England at the time that he was declared as a madman. He had a previous career. He was known, and suddenly the newspapers, particularly the Murdoch news, ones owned by Murdoch now, News of the World, were saying, here is this guy, a kind of small celebrity who's suddenly gone crazy, declaring that he's God. And the ridicule, it was just awful. The Brits can be merciless. They really can. They're like a pack of wolves. And then I didn't ever read any of his books until about 5 years ago. And I picked one up because I thought, it's right there in front of me. I should have a look at it. I've listened to him, and I actually prefer to listen to him. And I read the book, or I started to read the book, and thought, well, you've got to want to read this book to read it, because the way he constructs his books is it's very hard to read. You could not sit down, in your comfy armchair with a cup of tea and say, right, I'm going to dive into this for 2 hours, because they're challenging. The way the pages are laid out, the typeface, everything about it, to me, is screaming, you're only going to read this book if you're meant to, because there's everything here that's going to put you off. And it did actually put me off. So I could only read it in small, as you say, dip in here and dip out again. Yeah. And I don't know if that is deliberate on his part, but I'm pleased to see that a much maligned man is now getting a little bit more credence.
Yeah.
So number 5, quite a different book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron.
Okay, I love The Artist's Way. I can't speak highly enough of it, really, because maybe it was just one of those right time, right book, right what I needed. I remember feeling, I think when I first read that, I think I was feeling like I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to write more. I knew I wanted to be writing articles and be writing books, and even, well, eventually I ended up more writing online courses. I didn't realize I'd be doing that at the time, but technology has allowed that. And I can't even remember actually how I found the artist's way. I can't remember how I came across it, or if someone recommended it. I don't remember that part of it. I do remember doing it. I remember loving it. And I remember it obviously must have made a massive impact on me, because it's something that I have recommended to so many people and have gifted to so many people if they are going through a hard time, if they feel like they want to be doing something more meaningful with their life, and just aren't sure how to start. So I want everyone to know, don't be put off by the title, The Artist's Way. It's not just for artists, and for that matter, it's not even just for creative people or writers or that sort of thing. It's really for anyone who's feeling a little bit like, I'm not sure, I've lost my way a bit, or I know I want to change. I want to maybe change career or change my job or even change my life, but I'm just not sure how to go about it, because it's a real deep dive into you, into your own self. I'm a massive, massive, massive advocate of deep diving into your own self. The more you are aware of who you are, your beliefs, your patterns, your issues, your wounds, the clearer and clearer and clearer you become in your life. And the more you can stop repeating certain patterns, the more you can create new stories that are more, resonating with who you really are. And that's something that the Artist's Way really encourages you to do and helps you to do and supports you to do. It's just through journaling. I call journaling, back to the point of the Artist's Way, she gets you to do your morning pages, which is journaling. And that's the business that Yellen and I first started. When we first started, we created journals at a time where journaling wasn't a thing. Like if we went to our local news agency, you could just sort of buy the red and black notebooks. To buy journals, now you can buy all sorts of ones and they're decorated and all colorful. But back then when we did our journaling business, that wasn't the case. I've journaled my whole life, ever since I was 11 years old. And I often refer to journaling, when I recommend journaling to people, as checking your emails from yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what the morning pages are for, in the Artist's Way. They're checking your emails from yourself. And imagine doing that every day for 12 weeks. Of course, you're going to emerge somewhat changed.
I interviewed her about 3 or 4 years ago. She brought out a book which I really thought was very smart, and it was very much the artist's way. But it was for the more mature person who either has retired or had a huge change in their life, or somebody perhaps who was in some kind of midlife crisis or had got divorced or given up the job, or the job had given up them, and they were in a kind of transition period. And she, it's the same formula of the journaling, but I just thought it was just such a wonderful reminder to people that just because one thing has ended, it doesn't mean that everything stopped. Here is your opportunity to go within and bring out your creativity and start anew with something else. And some of the stories that she told about people who really felt like they'd lost their way, after maybe a divorce or a bereavement or redundancy or something like that, or retirement. And suddenly they realized that they had all of this stuff inside them that they could now come out and start playing with and enjoying again and share with the world. And I thought that was, I never read The Artist's Way when it was first came out and was really popular, but I really saw the value of it in that particular book.
Yeah.
Okay, so book number 6. And it's interesting, I would have expected this book to come up again and again and again in the book club, and it hasn't. I think it's only come up once, maybe twice, but I think it's once with you, and that is The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. So tell me what it was. What was happening for you when you came across this? Because I mean, this is a really old book, and what did it do for you?
Oh my gosh, I love this book. She was so ahead of her time. You know, she was around in the 20s, and around that time, I would have loved to actually live then, because that was the time where Florence Scovel Shinn was around, Nikola Tesla, Rudolf
Yeah.
Steiner. So all of these people who they really had it going on. I think they would have just absolutely thrived right about now. So my stepmom, she got me that little book. And Christian and I were preparing to travel. And what happened was, so Christian and I mean, you know, we'd known each other back when I was 20. We lost touch for about 14 years. Long story short, we reconnected, and that's it. You know, we've been together, you know, ever since the last 13 years or so. And what happened when we first got together, we decided to do some traveling. And we weren't sure how long we were going to go for, but we knew we wanted to go for a while. We had enough money, you know, for about 5 months. And we asked the pendulum how long we were going to go for. And it said 15 months. And, you know, we thought, yeah, right. How is that going to happen? Anyway, we packed our bags, and I packed little Florence Scovel Shinn's little book, The Game of Life and How to Play It. And she has all sorts of, she's kind of like the original Abraham, Esther Hicks. You know,
Mhm.
that's how she kind of speaks. And she does things like, you know, if you're, well, you know, we're talking about 100 years ago, you know, so that language. But she said, if you're waiting for a check to come in the mail, buy your letter opener, buy that letter opener that, you know, see yourself opening that check, for example. So we took this book with us, and we used it constantly, because inevitably, of course, there did come the day where the 5 months was gone, you know, coming up. And we had a one-way ticket from LA down to Santiago, Chile, where Christian's aunties were, and we were going to spend Christmas with them and then make our way up South America. So we'd done our, you know, 4 or 5 months in the US, and here we are about to get on a plane from LA to Santiago with about $200 left, and it's just before Christmas. And and we got out the book, and I remember reading, you know, some of Florence's affirmations, you know, the divine, you know, the plentiful supply is, you know, now ours. And, you know, we were saying all the little Florence Scovel Shinn things. And we're staying with one of my family members in Arizona. And we went for a walk, and it's that time of night where, you know, everyone's starting to put on their house lights. And I'll never forget, we were walking around the corner, and I'm getting emotional now, even remembering it. We were walking around the corner, and someone's Christmas lights had just gone on their roof. And in bright lights, it had the word believe. And Christian and I just looked at each other and went, okay. And then we went home. And I remember checking my bank account, not expecting anything, actually. It was more, I think we had to pay a bill or something. I thought, okay, I just need to go and see what's there and transfer some money. And there was an unexpected Christmas gift from my dad and my stepmom. Now, they didn't know anything about our financial situation. We hadn't mentioned it to them. I hadn't said anything about money. It was just a little, and it wasn't by any means enough for the next, you know, year or even 3 months or anything, but it was enough. It was that faith. It was like, okay, this is a sign. We are on the right path. It's okay. It was enough that we knew when we got to Chile, it would be okay. And at that time, you know, I want people to know I wasn't, you know, being totally crazy. I was doing online soul sessions. So, you know, we did know there were little fishing lines in the water where money could potentially come. But it was that little bit of, you know, little gift that came, was that, okay, we know we're going to be able to eat for the next few weeks. So it was amazing. And that happened over and over and over again. Like we'd get down to nearly $0, a soul session would come in. We'd get down to nearly $0. you know, I'd sell a course. Like something would always happen. And it always happened back then in those travels, because I always called that particular trip our boot camp for the law of attraction, thanks to Florence Scovel Shinn, and actually thanks to Abraham Hicks. We were listening to them as well all the time. That was our boot camp, because we did always usually have to go to near $0 before the manifestation would come. Over time, when you start learning not to panic anymore and completely be in trust, what we found was we didn't have to keep going down to that $0 all the time. But
Yeah.
on that trip, we did many times. And yeah, I mean, I can't recommend Florence Scovel Shinn's book enough for any reason. If you are going through relationship stuff, if you have fears around money, abundance, health, it's a tiny little book, but it's so powerful.
And did you, were you gone 15 months?
Yes, we were gone. Yeah, we were gone exactly 15 months from, actually, I think even nearly 16. We left, yeah, we left about June one year, and we came home October the next year. Yeah.
So, in the meantime, which is the title of your next book by Iyanla
Yeah.
Van Zandt. So, in the meantime, what else was going on? And what about this
In
book?
in the meantime, okay. So this is leading up to that time. So essentially, my relationship pattern throughout my 20s was to attract the unavailable the unavailable male. And let me tell you, they were all beautiful soulmates. They were all spiritual. That I'm absolutely sure they were all a soulmate of mine, but they were all non-committal. Okay. And I can see now, and I could see eventually once I started working on my relationship issues, that there was a part of me that was non-committal and didn't want to commit. But at the time, obviously, it was frustrating. And I remember quite specifically, actually, around the time I was, I don't know, I think I was about 32-ish. I remember this moment, and it happened again. It happened again, the exact same pattern. I caught it quicker, but it was the same thing. I was having this wonderful, what I thought was a relationship with someone. Turns out it wasn't so much, he wasn't thinking it was a monogamous relationship, right? And that was it. I drew a line in the sand, and I thought, you know what? I can't keep doing this. I can't keep attracting this same relationship pattern over and over and over again. Like this, what is going on here? And I kind of did a relationship, self-reflection immersion for a good year, where if there was a book on relationships, I read it. If there was some inner issue, I dove down and looked at it. And I had been, obviously, I was on a very conscious spiritual path in my 20s, but I hadn't, I guess, delved this deeply with such a focus purely on relationships. And I remember reading Iyanla Van Zandt's In the Meantime, and there was something just so, she's got this knack of being simultaneously very grounded, very down to earth, very tell it like it is. She's kind of like that tough mama, right? But very kind and very gentle and very soothing and very reassuring. And it's kind of like she left me with the message, you know what? Clean yourself up inside. And then I was just left with this feeling of, actually, it doesn't matter if no one ever comes into my life again. I've actually really found myself and connected with that real, I love myself and I love my life. And not just, oh, I love myself, like it's a, fluffy affirmation, but I really felt whole. That's the word, Sandie. I felt whole. And I felt like, wow, I actually, in healing wounds connected to relationships, I actually realized that relationships actually, it almost ended up being the icing on the cake. My real gift out of that whole time was connecting with the relationship with my own self in a bigger and better way. And yeah, I just emerged thinking, if I'll accept my soulmate. But other than that, I'm actually happy with myself as I am. And as things tend to happen, that's pretty much around the time that Christian then came into my
No
life.
doubt. Yeah, yeah. And you're right. I mean, she's grounded. She's practical, and she is kind. I mean, to read some of her books. It's not often books leave me lost for words to describe them or to
Mm.
describe the feelings, but
Yeah.
every single one of her books always leaves me in a place of silence as I take it all in. She's just so wise, so
She's
wise.
so wise.
And the beauty about her is that she has lived it all. She
Mm.
has gone through everything. You know,
Yeah.
we think we may have had a challenging lives. Well, my God, read about her life. And so you can take it all the more because here is someone who had so much to contend with. And, look how she's emerged. Yeah, she
Mm.
deserves to be the best-selling author that she is, for sure.
Yes.
So another best-selling author who, again, isn't with us is Debbie Ford, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, Debbie, I feel so sad. I've just got a wave of emotion through me because I feel like when she passed, I just have this image of her, of how she was then, just so young still.
Mm, mm, yeah.
So the dark side of the light chasers, look, as someone, if you know anything about astrology, I've got Pluto on my midhaven, right bang on. So I am all about the shadow. And this is what this book is about. It's about looking at your shadow, that part of you that maybe you don't look at enough. And what I really love about the dark side of the light chasers is also the concept of what some people call our golden shadow. So our shadow isn't just our, maybe our stubborn self that we don't want to look at, or our irritated self that we don't want to look at. Our shadow can also be our genius. Our shadow can also be our talented self, our, abundant, wealthy self. All those things can be in our shadow. So the thing that I got the most, I think, out of the dark side of the light chasers, and it's a tool that I have continually, constantly used in my own life, and that I refer to clients all the time, is speaking to aspects of yourself, aspects of your shadow, as if you are having a conversation with somebody. So I know, in your 10 best list, I gave the example of talking to, disappointed Dora or tired Tanya. I even use that, like if I've got a specific health issue, so say if you're going through digestion issues, for example, you can give that a name and say, okay, digestion Dora or whatever, and use your journal, again, the journal, and speak to digestion Dora and say, what is your message here for me? And I find it incredibly helpful. And I think the title there really says it all, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. I think too often in the spiritual field, it is all about the light and the positive, where I'm really just interested in being aware,
Yeah.
awake and aware and conscious of all of it. We have to look at all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly. If I've got a pebble in my shoe, I want to know that I've got a pebble in my shoe and not just walk around. I was using this analogy, the other week. We can't just affirm that away and say, I'm fine, I'm comfortable, I'm comfortable, when there's a pebble in the shoe. It's so much more effective to stop, take off your shoe and be like, okay, I've got a pebble in my shoe, and take it out.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
very
That's
simple, brilliant. Yeah.
had the same effect on me, that book. Yeah. Number 9, Red Hot and Holy by Sarah Beek. What a woman.
Oh my gosh, Sarah Big. This book, honestly, and I don't think I've said this about many books or any books, actually for me was an activation, honestly. It came into my life when a time when I had experienced what I call my divorce from my guides. I had had a very, very, very profound healing session. I ended up, confronting this, table of beings, and I realized, oh my gosh, I've been reporting to them and working for them, but it wasn't necessarily reporting and working for who I thought I was reporting and working for. So it was just a really confronting experience. And I really pulled back and I disconnected from tuning in or connecting to anything up there and out there for quite a long time, because I thought, unless I know who and what I'm connecting to, and unless I know what and who I can trust, I cannot, in all good conscience, connect with anything anymore for a while. And it was actually it was a traumatic experience, to be honest, because my whole life, that's all I'd known. Imagine your whole life, you talk to they, and you are connecting up and out your whole life, and all of a sudden, I couldn't do it anymore, and I just couldn't. I just recoiled and stepped back. And what ended up happening is I allowed myself that void, and I started sensing and hearing almost like a voice from beyond. And I was like, who is that? What is that? And I kept asking and asking and asking. And eventually, and I'm talking months of asking, I got this word, she. And I had never, and it seems crazy now, but I'd never in all my spiritual seeking years come across this concept of she. Now, having connected with so many, feminist and feminine spirituality teachers and researchers and academics, now I know that there's been this whole movement of the she for, decades, if not actually thousands of years, millennia. But I thought, what's going on? How is it possible that I've been in this spiritual world, for at that time, a good 20 years or whatever it was, and I haven't connected with this she? So I had to go on this journey to really, connect with her and ask, who are you? Who are you? Because when I thought of source, she was behind source. She was like the great grandmother of source. And around that time, Red Hot and Holy came into my life, and I read the book, and it was part of that. It's like something in me had already like cracked open, and then Sarah's book really kind of like went, okay, you're open now. Now we can activate and judge everything that is ready to be activated in you with this new phase of awakening. And really it was almost like I call it awakening 2.0.
Wow. Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Very, very interesting lady. There's a lot I could say about her and my experience interviewing her. All good, but we don't have time. But yes, that is definitely a book worth reading for sure. So number 10, Weaving the Visions, New Patterns in Feminist Spirituality by Judith Plasko and Carol Christ.
Yeah. Well, that whole she journey eventually led me to, I'd been looking and looking and looking for years for a master's degree to do, and I just could never find the right one. And all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but around that time, I found this one. It was the Women's Spirituality and Social Justice degree at the Californian Institute of Integral Studies. And of course, I'd been on that website many, many times. I had just never seen that particular degree. And I can guarantee it's because, for whatever reason, I wasn't ready for that. And so Weaving the Visions was one of our text books and text materials. And I just felt like I'd come home. I was introduced to so many authors and so many she-based teachings about our matrilineal, matrifocal history, herstory. And I felt like I'd come home. I thought, wow, I don't know where all of this has been in my so-called awakening journey. I don't know why it took me so long to find this particular realm of spirituality and awakening, but it was just like I'd come home into myself and into my own skin. and it grounded and embodied my entire awakening journey that I'd experienced up until that point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Again, you know, isn't it interesting when you look at the journey and the way it unfolds, and when the books come into your life, it's all there. It's all there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. So that's your 10 books. If you were asked by somebody that you cared deeply about to help them on their journey, and you could only give them one book from your list to read, which one would you recommend?
Oh my gosh, Sandie,
And I know that's a
what a
hard
question. One question, only one book.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It would have to depend, I guess, on what they are wanting at that point in their life, right? Different books for different
I
reasons.
think
But if you're pushing, yeah, if I need to pick one, yeah.
I think for somebody who is starting out, who really needs some confirmation and
Mm,
guidance on the
mm.
path.
Confirmation guidance on the path.
Yeah.
You know what? I'd probably go with I'm gonna say I'm tossing between The Artist's Way and The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And the reason I'm tossing between those two is because both of those books force the reader to go within. Both of those books force the reader to get out their journal and go within. Because once you've done that, you will then find your own way to whatever other books you need, to whatever other teachings you need, to wherever else it is that you
You
need to
need to
go.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Because what we're looking is something that's going to kickstart them and give them the
Yeah.
whatever tool they need at the beginning to make them
Yeah.
understand, yes, I'm on the right path, and where next.
Yeah.
Good choice. Good choice. Okay, so tell us a little bit about a new chapter, because it is so relevant for today. What will people find in there?
Okay. So a new chapter, I wrote that book essentially because of those visions that I had as a little girl. Because what I eventually realized, when I was, asking myself, what are these visions? Are they some other time? Are they some other place? What I really, really knew deep down in my heart is that we are here at this point in our evolution to create a new chapter, to create a new world, essentially, one that is built on truth, one that's built on authenticity, one that's built on a conscious, awake, aware humanity, where we treat each other and the earth in a very conscious way. I am a firm believer and very, very passionate about the fact that our awakening isn't just about a personal thing. It's not just about a personal awakening to have better personal lives. I really believe that our awakening is about all of us coming together as awakened beings, as a collective awakened humanity, to create a new chapter for our earth. So the book really is a combination of those two concepts of, first of all, how to awaken more of who you really are. So the main, saying of the book is, remember who you really are, do what you came here to do, be who you came here to be. It is full of prompts and processes that you can do for yourself. It goes through lots of different life areas and life aspects. So there's stuff in there to do with inner child healing, healing the relationship with your parents, healing any relationship issues you might have, looking at things like how to connect more with your life purpose if that's something that you are yet to connect to, looking at things like abundance issues, and then really wrapping it up with in the container of why is it so important that we do this? Because I use the analogy that we are all a piece of a 7 billion piece jigsaw puzzle, and if you're not writing your page, in this great big book of life. Someone else will be writing it for you. And we all want to be picking up our pen at this moment and writing our page in our collective humanity book, and contributing your piece of the jigsaw. And it doesn't matter what your piece of the jigsaw is. It doesn't matter. You don't need to be a big, a president or anything. It's just being that kind person, just being the kind person who, assures somebody, at the supermarket at the moment, this is the time now. Like, I'm just repeating over and over again to people, and you're right, Sandie, like, this is a book that I think has come into its right time right now, where if you have ever felt like you're here for a reason, a new chapter, the book will help you with that and to help you find your reason, because this year is the year to start living your reason, and you're here to help people. I think anyone watching this will know that you are here to help the transition that we're in right now.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, let's hope your book gets a new life, because it certainly deserves to have, it's one of those, there are certain books, I think they call them, or they used to call them in the old publishing days, sleepers. They sit on a shelf, they quietly sell in the background, enough to keep them alive. And then they gradually, over the years, the numbers increase and people begin to realize, wow, that book's becoming a classic. So
yeah, thank you. And I think, and just quickly, more and more people are becoming aware of the role of the media, for example, in our perception of reality, and the great responsibility that the media have with regards to what they are saying and how they are saying it. And I write about that in the book extensively as well.
Yeah. And before we bring it to a close, bring this event to a close, which has been a very interesting one for me, I want you to talk a little bit about She Fire.
Yes. So with my whole She Fire awakening and awareness, and a big part of that obviously was becoming a mum to Jackson and giving birth to him nearly 9 years or so ago.
Yeah.
I realized, I guess, the gaps in my own spiritual path, or I realized how much I'd been in what I now call the masculine version of spirituality, which is very much how I, sort of describe that, I guess, is it more the mind and the soul, the up there, the out there. And I've become much more attuned and connected to what I call more a feminine spirituality. And of course, men and women both have feminine and masculine in them. So the more grounded, embodied feelings, heart, body. And I found that I connect to that going into my body, and even down, like when I do my meditation to connect with she, it tends to go down into the earth, and from the earth I sort of pop into the great cosmic womb. So I ended up creating She Fire 13, which is a She Fire 13-week course that I offer usually about once a year. And as an extension of that, because all the women wanted to keep going once they had done the 13-week course, so what I created was She Fire membership, which is a monthly theme. So all the women who are in that get a monthly theme on a She Fire related topic. They get content to read, processes to do, a monthly meditation. We have a monthly live. So we chat about everything from, feminine spirituality for social transformation. The topic that we are doing right now is about our origins, all of humanity's origins in Africa, and what has become of things like the Black Madonnas that actually a lot of people have never even heard of, and the Black Goddess and our original African mother. So we traverse all sorts of topics, and really it's something that you can come in either way. So some people start with the She Fire monthly membership, and then they think, oh, I'd like to do the She Fire 13-week course. And other people do it vice versa. They'll do the She Fire 13-week course and then hop in and continue with the monthly. But all of those are, on my website.
Cool. And one last thing, ending on a light note, I I always ask people to give me keywords for themselves, descriptors, nouns, to describe themselves. And of course, we usually have some of the more formal biographical details like writer and energy intuitive.
Yeah.
And you said mama, teacher, writer, energy intuitive, truth seeker. I want one more word from you that describes who Dana is, that perhaps only her good friends and her loved ones really know. And it could be something quirky, funny, a little. Somebody talked about being a tree hugger. Someone else said that they were a cupcake connoisseur, wine lover, etc. Just give us one little word or phrase that gives us an insight into Dana.
Okay. I am a real homebody. I'm a real homebody hermit. I could just
Homebody
live at
hermit.
home. Yeah, a homebody hermit. I could live at home, be at home, just bake, cook. I love looking after my family, Christian and Jackson. I love baking and cooking, and I even love doing the grocery shopping because I'm planning the meals for the week ahead. When we all had to sort of stay home over the last few months, that was like, that's easy for me. So I'm a real homebody hermit.
So I love that phrase, and that to me speaks of a nurturer, a giver, somebody who wants to just give to others.
Yeah. And it was something that came to me, I think, later in life, because I didn't have Jackson until I was 38, nearly 39, and up until then I'd always been about my work, and he really activated that in me. He activated that mama self. I'd always been a homebody, but I think I always used to have my laptop attached to me when I was at home. Whereas now you'll find me in the kitchen, cooking something or other.
Beautiful. Dana Mrkich, thank you for sharing your 10 best spiritual books, the ones that influenced you the most on your journey. And can you tell our viewers where they can reach you?
Yes, thank you, Sandie. Thank you for having me. They can find me at danamrkich.com, and that's where you can, look me up. And I usually have a lot of blogs and blog posts there that you can read and just help you make sense of these current times that we are in. My books are there, my courses are there, my sessions are there. So, hop along, have a read.
Dana, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Sandie.
And thank you to you for joining us again. And we'll be back again next week with another edition of the No BS Spiritual Book Club's Face to Face with live interview series. That's it.